Iowa Sports Review is brought to you today by Daniel Marks, licensed sales representative with United Healthcare. Turning 65? Welcome to Medicare. Call Daniel at 515-519-0040, TTY 711.
Welcome in. I stole that from my cohort, Adam Jacobi. All credit to him. My name is Tom Clos. I write for Go Iowa Awesome under the tag name Classy Hawkeye. In case you see my work on there, my Pulitzer Prize worthy work. And welcome in to my little chat corner here. Whatever. Got to come up with a better name than that. On the Iowa Hawkeyes. Right now, football. It's a big deal. It's an incredible time to be alive and an Iowa Hawkeye fan. And there's a lot to go through. Hawkeyes just got through Penn State somehow, 23-20. I'd love to talk about that. There's quite a bit to get to there. And then a little later, look ahead to Purdue. I'm just going solo tonight. Hopefully, it's going to be tough to top Chuck Long in 15 days, if you don't know. My partner in crime, I guess, on this website, Adam Jacobi, has a show every Wednesday, and 2 weeks from tomorrow, Chuck Long, Iowa legendary quarterback, will be on the show. So please tune in tomorrow. He does a great job. And I'd like to thank him for having me on his show, and thank you to Dan Marks for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And let's dive in. You're free to just listen to me talk. Join in on the chat, though. I'd love to hear your thoughts, ask some questions. We'll get a dialogue going. And like I said, it's an exciting time. Speaking of that, Saturday, wow. It was something. It was. I have about 1 million pictures on my phone. I was at the game. Ran on the field, did the whole thing, jumped on a few strangers that I was sitting next to, following Nico Rogani's game-winning touchdown. And I have to take a moment and say I'm just blown away at what an atmosphere that was, how the crowd was. And I didn't think they'd do it, but they came back and won. A couple of things about that game, though, just overall for the program, it's such a, I don't want to say game changer, because Iowa's never going to become Alabama with getting kids like that or a big name blue blood program. But man, it's those stages where if there's one thing they have not done at Iowa, it's really come through on those stages. 15, the championship game, and the Big Ten championship game in the Rose Bowl, 09 at Ohio State, just to name a couple. I mean, there's other night games, that the heartbreaker against Penn State a couple years ago on the last play of the game. And so just to see them come through to finally make the plays down the stretch in a game that, it looked bleak for a while. It did not look good. And they found a way. And just to wrap a bow on the Sean Clifford discussion, I don't know when we started with, well, if so-and-so doesn't get injured, then we win, so we win. Yeah, I mean, I'm staying completely out of these types of conflicts because I can't handle them. There's cooler-headed people that can have fun with these things. But the Penn State and Iowa fans going back and forth about the Sean Clifford, if he's still in the game, then they would have won and all of that. A couple of things. One, Iowa knocked him out. They knocked him out of the game. This wasn't an illness. This wasn't a fluke injury like Riley Moss had in the game after an interception. Jack Campbell made a play and knocked him out of the game. Football is a physical sport. And typically when you have a good defense, you're going to have nasty guys that knock people out of games. That's what happens. And I just don't have time for it's as if you're blaming the game on officials. Not that officials were part of this game, but blaming a game on officials is the same as we would have won if XXX. That being said, I have to point out that James Franklin I actually mentioned it a little bit last week on Adam's show, but he's not a good coach. He's a great recruiter. They've won a Big Ten title. He got hot with a really, really generational type of running back in Saquon Barkley and a good quarterback in Trace McSorley. And Joe Moorhead spearheaded that offense. But he in game situations, time and time again, he just comes up short in big games too, whether it's against Ohio State or this one against Iowa. How Roberson, the backup quarterback, how he was not prepared to take a snap. Okay, I get it. He's not Sean Clifford, but the guy couldn't take a snap without false starts. He fumbled the first snap, and then it seemed like they opened up the playbook once Roberson came into the game. I didn't understand any of it. Thankfully, I don't have any of that. None of us do. Iowa won the game 23-20. Coupled with Alabama's loss, Iowa is now number 2 in the country. I never thought I'd say that, maybe in my life. They have a first place vote in the coaches poll, which the coaches poll is completely irrelevant and, quite frankly, an embarrassment. Except they have a vote in the coaches poll for number 1, so it's the greatest poll of all time this week. I wish they had gotten one in the AP poll. I like that one better. But it's an amazing wave right now, pardon the pun. It's been an incredible season that really out of kind of nowhere, just in that they just beat Penn State, who was number 4 and has all these athletes, and they came through finally. And really it's the biggest win since the 85 Michigan game. For what it means for the program and how it can be a boost to raising, the caliber of recruits they're getting. They had, I think it was 80 recruits, it seemed like, in town. Stuff like that. This resonates. Wins like these resonate. That being said, it's the biggest win if they can continue on. And everything's in front of them. Their toughest game left might actually be at Nebraska. I thought it'd be at Wisconsin at the beginning of the season, but there's no excuse. You have to go up there and win that game. This week's tricky. We'll get to that in a sec with Purdue. But if they're not 12-0, it's a disappointment at this point. And that's crazy with Iowa and thinking about that with Spencer Petras as your quarterback, but it's all right there. They've passed every test, every tough test they'll face this season up until Indianapolis. They've passed. So go win the rest of your games and then fight for a playoff berth in 60 minutes. Quick chat in here from Corn and Cattle. Thank you. Anyone hear news on Moss? So Kirk Ferentz at his presser, I think it was today. God, I think it was. My head's been spinning since the Penn State game. It was. And Moss is out this week, but he is not done for the year. It looked like they got lucky that he's going to be okay. What that means is they have a bye next week. So the target is 2 weeks at Wisconsin, from what I've heard from Chad Leistikow and all the reporters on the beat. But we'll see with that. So it's next man up. Here we go. Blame it. Or if David Bell, who probably will burn Iowa this week, but if he burns Terry Roberts 17 times, am I going to sit there and go, well, if Riley Moss would, I can't get over the Clifford situation. I'm sorry. No, so it's Terry Roberts and it's next man up. And at Iowa, the program prides itself on that. And it's really a shame because not only was Moss putting in by far his best season at Iowa, they were completely healthy going into the Penn State game, which is amazing. I mean, they did not have one injury concern really at all. And what a fluky play. Great interception on an overthrown ball, and he just collapsed. It was really odd, and it looked bad. It looked much worse than I think it is. Obviously, keep an eye on it. That'll be a big topic this week with Purdue coming up and how much Iowa struggled with them. He should be back. If not for Wisconsin, then perhaps the week after. The real Hayden mentions talking about rats, and Kirk Ferentz maybe Kirk is nearing the end of his career. I don't have any evidence of that. I'm just saying because of his age, maybe he's thinking, okay, I only have at most 5 years left in this thing. I don't care anymore. And I'm just gonna not do the Kirk Ferentz thing, and I'm just gonna start ripping other teams and their coaches. But I thought his comments were fantastic today. I mean, it was so maybe on brand new Kirk. What was it last year? Minnesota, leave the timeouts or take the points, leave the timeout, something like that. I have a shirt, I think, back there with something on it. That's to that extent after they beat Minnesota. I'll have to dig it out for next week's show. But he comes out and says something to the extent of the crowd could smell rats in relation to booing Penn State with the injuries and during the game. And I know a lot of Penn State people, James Franklin came out and said, that rubbed him the wrong way, blah, 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 blah. One of the things that bothers me in sports more than anything is booing real injuries and being at a game or watching a game on TV. I think it's classless to boo injuries. I think it's very classless kind of to boo college kids in general. That being said, it was to the point where on at least 3 separate occasions, not only were Penn State players getting injured on positive gains, which in the first half there weren't a lot of for Iowa on offense, but the way they were getting off the field, I've never seen outside of Sean Clifford. Every time they would pull a guy up, he would spring to his feet, run off, and then he'd be in one play later. And the Kinnick crowd, very knowledgeable crowd, was, staring at the guy on the bench, waiting for him to come back in to boo him. Whoever it was. It was about 4 different instances I remember. And then I think I just lost count. So I think it's completely valid. And there's this whole you think they would slow down Iowa's offense because Iowa's offense wasn't doing anything and it's not fast paced, blah, blah, blah. I just think there were too many times it happened where it can't just be dismissed. And yeah, if you're asking me, I don't know what that's doing to Iowa's offense other than, making them go a little slower. It's not like Iowa's offense runs around, but Iowa couldn't get an offensive rhythm. It does hurt in some extent. Iowa's not Oregon with Chip Kelly, but I thought, I actually thought the booing, you've seen clips. I forget the assistant. I think it was Kelton Copeland was rolling around on the ground, reenacting. There's a clip floating on Twitter of it, reenacting some of the injuries and alleged faking. So it wasn't lost on the coaching staff either. And I think the fact that Kirk came out and really addressed it like it was kind of validates the booing a little bit. Like, this wasn't just angry, drunk Iowa crowd, hashtag mean. I think it was, because that's not, look, it's an angry and drunk crowd sometimes, but it's very knowledgeable. I sit there, I'm with the people. We all know what's going on. Not a lot of people are like not engaged, especially a game like that. Everyone knows what was going on there. And that's that. I think we can leave it at that. I don't think it's going to linger. It would be interesting if we saw Penn State in Indianapolis, how this would come back, but it was a breath of fresh air to hear Kirk actually address it and really defend the Iowa fans on that, because it was a valid time to boo on a lot of those. Yes, I'm sure maybe a couple of guys were injured, but I don't remember them booing Sean Clifford when he came off the field. I distinctly remember that play. I don't remember them booing him. In fact, they didn't because one, he was lighting up Iowa at the time, kind of, but it was a real injury. You could tell. He got destroyed back there. So we'll just leave it at that. I love the comments by Kirk, and it's on to Purdue in that respect. A couple more things on Penn State. What can you say about that defense? We talked about Riley Moss's injury. He was out. I believe that happened late in the first half. He was out the rest of the game, and they didn't seem to miss a beat. Now, Roberson came in for Clifford. I understand all that, and he was having trouble throwing downfield. He was having trouble taking a snap at times. But, it's not like they were getting behind Terry Roberts. It's not like all of a sudden Riley Moss left and everything crumbled. I think there's enough depth And Terry's been around, man. I mean, he's been all over. He's made plays on special teams. He's been through the battles too. So you want Moss out there, even though David Bell has really kind of owned him. You do want Moss out there, and battling against Purdue. You just want to be a top strength, and I think he's their number one as of right now. He's still their number one rated cornerback, from Pro Football Focus, who does college. I believe I saw that tweet. He's their best cornerback right now. And statistically, and he's out, but next man up. And I thought the defense, they on Clifford, they picked him off in that first play, which again, that credit to Torrey Taylor for pinning him deep. Once you get down there, everything shrinks for an offense with that crowd. And I mean, Iowa's defense was smelling blood in the water immediately. And you figure, man, if Iowa could have turned that into a touchdown, maybe it just starts snowballing in Penn State. It really looked like that early on. And you know what? They had trouble, though. I thought Penn State's game plan with Clifford was pretty well executed. I mean, they completely abandoned the run, which maybe they should have gone back to with Roberson just to give a hint of that, to say maybe we can, we're going to try this. Because once Clifford left, I was just pinning their ears back, and then, like I said, James Franklin opened the playbook. But after Clifford, before Clifford went out, when it was 7-3, Iowa was just having trouble. I don't know what they were getting burned on those short passes, and I don't know what it was about it, but they just could not contain Sean Clifford. They would not. I don't know if they were spying. I got to go back and watch a lot of the tape, but I don't remember them really spying on him hard. And there were some plays where he wasn't even looking to pass. He was looking run the whole time. He'd fake the pass and just take off. A couple of those third and 8 to 3rd and 12. And it looked bleak. I mean, it did not look good. At 17-3, the play before is actually when Clifford got completely destroyed by Jack Campbell. But at 17-3, it was looking like big games of Iowa's past, particularly Penn State. I think that 2012 game came to mind, and that ended up being a really bad Iowa team. But Iowa was, they were 4-2 entering that game, and Penn State came in under Bill O'Brien and just destroyed them. And it was, I knew this team. I don't think this team's going to get blown out really by anyone. Maybe Georgia in the national championship game. If that happens, I'll probably be very happy that we're just there. But it didn't look good. And it looked like they were struggling to figure it out. Now, again, they made a play. Jack Campbell made a play. He knocked the quarterback out of the game. If Clifford stays in the game, I trust the Iowa defense to figure it out to an extent. I think the problem would have been, it was such a struggle to get to 23 because Penn State's defense, that's another thing. Their defense is very good. I mean, they had a lot of athletes in that secondary that could play ball hawks. And really in that, Petrus did not look good. I think he started 1 of 9, but credit that defense too. I mean, in the red zone, it's no wonder that the winning touchdown was from 44 yards out. The Nika Rogani play, he gets inside the 20, and a couple of those drives late in the game stalled inside the 10, inside the 5. That defense was stingy in the red zone. And full credit to them. I mean, Penn State's defense almost won the game, even after Clifford left. But, Iowa's offense found a way. And another thing in that second half was, I thought the running game got going later in that game. It really, even up to Iowa got the ball back after the Matt Hankins stop on 4th down. In the first play, Goodson popped a 7-yard run. And then Iowa stalled. They couldn't get 3 yards on 2 more plays. But late in that game, it really looked like that offensive line was moving. They were leaning. It started to look a little more like it did at Maryland for a little bit and against Kent State. This wasn't at Iowa State. They just couldn't run all day. But they were really moving. Goodson ended up going for 88 yards on 25 carries. He had a 20-yard run. So there were holes at times. And that's something to watch going forward, especially against Purdue. And some of these other teams, I mean, Northwestern, Iowa should be running all over them. Minnesota, Wisconsin's really the last really, really, really good defense they're going to see, maybe even through the Big Ten championship game, because Penn State's defense is probably better than Ohio State's defense, and Wisconsin's defense might be better than Ohio State's defense. It's not very good. By December, if Iowa's playing them, even, we'll see. You know, and yeah, and just the Saturday itself in Iowa City. You know, someone's asking me here if I can elaborate on rushing the field. It's just a surreal thing. You know, through the fourth quarter, you don't think they're just the I don't even know if it's defeatist attitude, but just I've seen this movie so many times. Even without Roberson, Iowa's offense could not crack that egg. They just could not break through. And you figured if they just get the lead, that's it. Because Penn State wasn't going to score again on this defense. You know, and so when they took the lead, finally, with 6:40-ish left. Feels like it was about 10 minutes, but I think it was around 6.5 minutes left. The air was like breathed back into Kinnick. It was tense. It was very tense up until that moment. I mean, the crowd was great throughout. Nobody sat down, I don't think, in the entire fourth quarter, but it was still pretty tense. Can they just find a play? And once they found that play, then it was sort of a party. As a matter of fact, it was kind of a blur the last 6.5. I have some videos of me just screaming, stop them, like 100 times in my phone over the last 6 minutes. And it was one of those weird Iowa games too, where they had stopped them. Iowa, it felt like, won the game 3 times. There was the Hankins fourth down play, and you figure, okay, first down ends it. They didn't get it. Then there was the Hankins interception, and you figure, okay, interception, game over, which if he didn't catch it, they would have the ball inside the 5. They get an unsportsmanlike penalty. So then that led to, I think they had 1 yard, nothing, or they may have lost a yard and then took 2 knees. Kirk Ferentz blowing our minds yet again. I think that was an homage to the 6-4 game, the safety on purpose late in that game. And then, and then Torrey Taylor, just a machine. And I think Kirk knew. We all knew Penn State was not going to score on that defense. It just wasn't going to happen. Roberson was not driving. They only needed a field goal, and they weren't going to get past the 20. It felt like, I mean, it was that lockdown, and it was that lockdown. That's exactly what happened. So the game ends, and you just start losing your mind. I don't know. Like, I didn't think the whole court storm, the whole field storming thing doesn't go through your head, and then you see it happen. And it's like, I don't know what to do now. Do I leave? Do I stay and watch this? Do I join in? So I went and I joined in. I was at a field storming in 2011 when they beat 2019 when they beat Minnesota. And I think Minnesota was in the top 5 too. Undefeated at least. And they stormed the field. I was too high up. I couldn't really get to it. But this time I'm like, I'm going. This is our 1985 Michigan-Iowa game. I wasn't around for that, 4 years before I was born. I'm going down there, and I had to join in. And you just go. And the Kinnick crowd control, security, Iowa City police force was fantastic. They did such a great job. They let everyone take pictures. I was rolling around, I think, at one point in the end zone, doing snow angels on the black turf. It was... You're out there and you look around and it's magic. It's just magic. And, you think back an hour and a half, 2 hours earlier, and you're like, we're going to lose and you're in bad shape. And it flips to that. And it's a wonderful thing. That's really all it's tough to describe it unless you're down there, but it's an amazing thing. And how cool when you're on the field. It's like, oh, this is what the players see. This is how it is down here. And that turf is hot, very hard. It's got to hurt when you get tackled. Yeah, exactly. DW Share chatted here. I don't like the what if game. I mean, we could play that all day. If Jacob's on his feet on the first pick of the game, it would have been a touchdown. Yeah, he had a knee down. If it's 5 inches higher and he picks it off and walks in the end zone, Are we talking about a close game? That's a great point. Definitely. Andrew Moorfield, need to score more points than Purdue. Yeah. Unfortunately, in football, you have to score points. You can't win with 0, or else Iowa would probably win national titles. Bill Jeffords at 1 and 2 are really in the same class as Georgia, Alabama. I mean, Georgia, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're better than those two teams. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to beat both those teams. I do know this. Alabama and Georgia will eventually play unless one of them cratered. If that were the case, it's irrelevant whether Iowa's better than Georgia or Alabama. And if Georgia beats Alabama in like an SEC championship game, it's irrelevant if Iowa's better than Alabama. I guess the doomsday scenario in that respect would be Alabama beats Georgia, and then they both go to the playoffs. So if maybe Georgia could lose, and then that's an elimination game, get rid of one of them. But no, on a neutral field, I'm not expecting Iowa to go out there and beat Nick Saban in Alabama or this Georgia team, who's probably the best team, and they're clearly the best team in the nation, number one. I will say this: Iowa's number 2. They deserve to be number 2. I mean, there is not a more deserving team. They've been the most consistent team in the Big Ten by far. Ohio State took a game off against Oregon. The dirty little secret is Iowa's kind of blasted everyone except for Penn State. Like, they've really blasted everyone they've played. I mean, okay, Colorado State, that second half was a joke. I mean, the first half, they played the worst half of the year. The second half, they completely dominated. So it's not like this is, even in 2015, they were winning games 10-6, and it was a struggle, and they had to kick a 70-yard field goal to beat Pitt, it seemed like. And the Iowa State game was iffy, and they had to come back. And they went to Iowa State, and they really smacked that team around. The game was over in the third quarter. And they went to Maryland and just dropped a bomb. I know the national media wants to talk about how Talia Tagovailoa, had a bad game. Well, I don't know. By the 5th interception, is it really just a bad game, or is the defense playing really well? So no, I don't think they're better head to head right now than Georgia or Alabama. That might not matter until a national championship game. So I'm not really worried about, are they better than Alabama on October, whatever today is, October 12th. Just keep winning. I mean, they're better. I do know this. They're better than everyone else on their schedule up until Indianapolis. And if it's not Ohio State and Indianapolis, they're probably better than that team too. They've already beaten Penn State, and I would say they're better than Michigan State as of right now. I would take them to win that game. Ohio State would be tough. The key is, though, when you're talking about playoff, if from a national perspective, they're 6-0, they get to 12-0. If Ohio State's there and beats them, they both have a loss. The way the nation is going with, I mean, Alabama just lost. Who's to say Georgia might not lose or won't lose? They might lose. But you could get to Indianapolis and we're in with a win and we're in the playoff with a loss. I mean, that could be a thing too. That's on the table. Now that comes down to, I do know Iowa has to be you have to be undefeated when you get to Indianapolis, and they should be, as I said earlier. But that's a definite possibility. So this whole, I see a lot of the national media, they just line up. It's funny how that works too. The perception. It's like if Iowa loses to Iowa State, so they're 4-1. Penn State comes in at number 3, and Iowa beats them like they did. Then Kirk Ferentz is a genius. Kirk Ferentz got him up. He had him playing. The crowd was amazing. What a great night for Iowa. Instead, 12 hours after one of the biggest wins in their history, they beat the number 3 team, or the number 4 team, I'm sorry, in the country. I got to see, various tweets from people on ESPN and USA Today. Oh yeah, they're number 2, but they're not as good as Kentucky, or, they're not really number 2. We all know it's Ohio State and Alabama. Like, it's almost as if the national media members, a lot of them have like a personal interest in, like a financial interest in the playoff teams, and if Iowa's in it, it'll like take money from their bank account. Like they take it that personally, and it's very strange. And it's only college football. I don't see this in college basketball. I don't see it in any other sport. College football, for some reason, a lot of the national media members have this like personal attachment to whether or not you're worthy, and you're not worthy because you have a good defense and you don't have a great offense. So you're not worthy because of why? Because it's not sexy, because we're not beating Florida by 1 on the road and losing at Texas A&M or losing at home to Oregon. Is that how it works? Okay. It just comes down to that recruiting national championship crap, which really ruins the sport when you think about it, because preseason polls, foreign public opinion, it already sets teams back. I mean, Ohio State was in the playoff last year. I think they played 3 games in the regular season. I think it was 5 or something, but Iowa's always going to fight that though. So you just can't let that bother you. Clearly it's gotten to me a little bit, but you have to put it out of your head and just win your games each week, and it'll all take care of itself. David Delsberger here. The person who ranked Iowa number 6 is Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Cincinnati before Iowa. I mean, Alabama just lost. Like, what are we doing here? And quite frankly, I watched most of that game after the Iowa game. They took a half off. And I think that's what Alabama learned, and they might come back and win the national title. But you can't just walk on the road. This isn't last year's Alabama team where they can take halves off. They're not that good. Nobody is this year in college football. So it's all nonsense. I will say that the pollsters got it right. I mean, Iowa should have been number 2. They are number 2. If you look at the points, actually, they were clearly number 2. Ahead of 3 was Cincinnati, I think. But they were clearly number 2 in the AP poll. So they did do them right. But it's just stuff like that. And Iowa will always, we're 2 wins away from, Iowa's a Purdue, a bye, and a Wisconsin win away from the SEC, part due, tell your kids about Iowa because, I don't know, I guess we suck at football, except we're 8-0, number 2 in the country. They're always going to fight that though. And I guess we're just going to keep fighting it through December. And if they're 13-0 and number 2 in the college football playoff or number 1, then I guess the results speak for themselves. So just keep winning. And like I said, though, it is a program win against Penn State for these types of reasons. Maybe they need to do more of this to get the cachet. I don't know. I do know entering this past week, I was marveling at how, and I think I mentioned this to Adam on his show last Wednesday, how nationally they were getting respect, it felt like. Colin Cowherd on his show, there was a clip floating around where he was waxing poetic about how beautiful Iowa was and the sunset, and he almost committed to moving here. And then they beat the number 4 team in the country, and now I think they're worse off for it, according to the national media. I'll never figure it out. Again, I think Dan Wolken has some college football playoff stock that goes down if Iowa is involved, or anyone he doesn't deem worthy. And so, I don't know what else to tell you except it's nonsense, and Iowa deserves to be number 2. And we'll worry about Georgia and Alabama. If we're worrying about Georgia and Alabama head to head, I think we're doing something right. I think it's been a very, very good year. And at the beginning of the year, when I was thinking if they can get through those first 2 weeks 1-1, this team's gonna be in really good shape. If it's 2-0, watch out. Well, they're 6-0 and number 2 in the country. So I'm riding the rainbow right now. I'm putting on my sunglasses, letting the wind blow through my hair, and we're just riding off and hoping this ride never ends. And ends with a miracle college football national championship. Hawkeye Howard. David Delsberger also is Arkansas number 8. Incredible. And Hawkeye Howard made 2 great points here. Iowa's not a flashy team. That's all that is. It's that we don't like to watch. It's boring to watch. We don't like to watch that. We like to watch Ole Miss and Arkansas. Funny point about that. I was reading it was a Big 12, one of the schools in the Big 12, one of their blogs, and they were talking about Texas and OU versus, CBS Sports. That's what it was. They were talking about the Texas OU game, and then they're contrasting it with the Ole Miss and Arkansas game. Both games, I think the 4 teams scored over 48. I think that, both teams just scored 1 million points in both those games. There's no defense in either one. Well, in the Big 12, it's Big 12 defenses are horrible. teams going up and down. Texas has no defense. Oklahoma has no defense. In the SEC, it's Ole Miss and Arkansas's offenses are incredible. They're great defenses, but their offenses are just lighting it up. That's the narrative. That's how it's going to work. And, as much as I think most people dislike the machine that is ESPN, they are the SEC network. And so it's never going to stop. I mean, there was a reason why College Game Day, I don't want to get back to this, but there's a reason why College Game Day, and good. I'm glad it wasn't in Iowa City. It was much more fun with Bob Stoops. I think he was shotgunning beers Friday night. I wish I was there Friday night. I didn't run into him on Saturday. He's sitting there. He's shotgunning beers. He's yelling, "Go Hawks." It couldn't have been better. So nobody wanted College Game Day. I don't want him to come back. Screw it. I just don't care anymore about it. The show is irrelevant anyways. But they go to Texas OU. It made no sense. You had a top 5 matchup. And but that's what ESPN is. They're the SEC network, and they just orchestrated Texas and OU joining the SEC. So it's not surprising. It really isn't. Hawkeye Howard has a great point here. Purdue has had her number the past few years, so we can't let up this week. And it's so true. And the game last year, I remember Iowa actually kept up scoring-wise. Iowa was a better team, obviously. That Purdue team wasn't any good. And then Tyler Goodson was going off, and then Kirk did one of his trademark, we're going to stop running Tyler Goodson. I think he had 1 carry in the second half or 1 carry in the third quarter, and Purdue came back. Something that concerns me with Purdue, 2 things. One, David Bell, dominant. I can't believe he's still at Purdue. He's been so good. Why isn't he in the league? I think it's been injuries, and he's been banged up this year, but he's back now. In fact, he went for 120 yards on 6 receptions against Minnesota. They lost that game 2 weeks ago. Purdue had a bye this past week. But 2 things concern me about Purdue. One, David Bell, but 2, and it's in relation to David Bell. For some reason, and Dotson for Penn State, Jahan Dotson did not go off. And that might have been part of the Clifford deal, but Iowa really checked him. They did a great job on him. Whether or not, whoever's the quarterback, they did a great job on him because he's fantastic. And in the past, though, it feels like that for some reason under Phil Parker, whenever Iowa's always been good on defense. And he should be the assistant coach of the year this year nationally, maybe forever. He's done an unbelievable job. But for some reason, when they've entered these games where you have to key in on a player and it's like, watch him, he's going to burn you, they end up burning Iowa. And maybe that's why we key in on these guys. But it seems like they just go off like crazy. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's the biggest one. Look, nobody was stopping him. It just hurts when it's like the first play of the game is a 75-yard touchdown. But David Bell's been another one. It's every year they've played Purdue with Bell. It's like, watch him. He's going to go off. They have to stop him. And they haven't been able to stop him. So that's going to be the challenge. And yeah, the Riley Moss injury works out perfectly, for Purdue coming into town. But again, it's Purdue. They've struggled this year. They hung with Notre Dame. I watched a lot of that Purdue Minnesota game 2 weeks ago. 2, average at best teams. Couldn't really stop Minnesota at all. And their offense, I think they're on like their 7th running back at this point, Minnesota. Purdue puts up points, but Iowa doesn't allow points. And the only way Iowa is really going to be in trouble in this game, I do expect Iowa's offense, if nothing else, they can run. They'll be able to run a little bit on this team. If nothing else, Iowa, if they have to score, I think against teams not named Iowa State and Penn State, the offense has really been okay. I mean, it hasn't been that first half against Colorado State was bad by everyone. The defense was even bad, but I mean, they've been good enough. And even against Iowa State, they made the plays. That game was on cruise control in the third quarter. So yeah, I get it. Petrus isn't Johnny Unitas back there, but they should be able to put some points up on this team. I was an 11.5 point favorite, and Purdue's allowing, what do they allow? They allow almost 300 yards a game, 180 through the air, and 125 on the ground. So there should be lanes there. I expect Tyler Goodson to really get going. I'm still waiting for that big Tyler Goodson game against a Power 5 opponent. He had a big day against, I think it was Kent State. Kent State or Colorado State, one of the two. But we're still waiting for that. I mean, he had a huge day against Maryland, but everyone did. Just that game where he really just carries this offense and they just keep moving. And like I said, Penn State's defense, very, very good, as was Iowa State's defense. And Iowa found a way. And so there is concern. There's always concern. It's Iowa. I get it. I have the butterflies in my stomach too, thinking about it. But again, if this team is as good as we all think they are, if this team's as good as us going on Twitter and screaming at, Chris Felica because he's saying that Oklahoma's better than Iowa and stuff, you got to beat Purdue at home. I mean, these are the types of games that if you lose, it can kind of erase last week. And the West, it should be theirs. There isn't a team there that should be able to compete with this team for 60 minutes. None. I don't care if you're at Nebraska. I know Nebraska's look better. I know Wisconsin's always a hairy trip. Their offense is absolutely dreadful. And Purdue's a team that Iowa should be able to just outclass, at least defensively and offensively. And I would expect that offensive line, again, they did get some push at the end of that game. They were moving the ball a little bit. And then when they were trying to run out the clock, Penn State was just keying in on everyone. I actually thought they should have maybe rolled Petrus out on like a bootleg run or something. I know he can't run, but something, just switch it up because they were not going to run up the middle. And then they just started to take knees. So yeah, I mean, Purdue, it's going to be, I always say it every week. It's a nightmare. It's always a nightmare until Iowa's up 34-7 or 34-7. Yeah. At the half at Maryland, the game's a nightmare because you're just on edge the whole time, but that's why we love this sport. And that's why we love this team. Yeah. Hawkeye Howard. If we win this game this weekend, Iowa's 3 games ahead of everyone. Yeah. My worry was, if there was any worry about the West, it was lose against Penn State, go to Wisconsin, lose there. Wisconsin has a kind of a lighter slate, and Wisconsin wins a tiebreaker. I think winning the Penn State game, it's pretty much, unless this team forgets how to play football, it should not be a question. The goal should be now winning the Big Ten championship game, getting to the playoff, not to look ahead. I mean, this isn't like it's over, it's a wrap, but we should be going into these games. They're going to be favored in every game at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, going and expecting them to just win and just find a way. And now you're number 2 in the nation, just win. And if you're undefeated, just win. There's no you don't need any sexy wins. They're never going to win sexy enough. So just get through it. I don't care if it's 3-2. I don't care if it's 2-0. I don't care if they win 6-4 the rest of the season. Just get through them and just survive in advance. Yeah, DW Share. It's a good thing that the game is 60 minutes and not 30. Exactly. Yeah, they were in trouble there for a minute. Actually, Hawkeye Howard, the starting quarterback for Colorado State, I believe, is the only one to survive an entire game against Iowa this year. His question was, if I remember right, the starting quarterback has not finished a game with Iowa. They were pulled or hurt. I couldn't tell you the name of the Colorado State quarterback. He's out of my mind after Iowa won that game. He's the only one to finish a game. He hung in there. Colorado State really gave Iowa the best game up until Penn State, which is interesting. D's nuts about Iowa. I was at the Rose Bowl a few years ago and saw that Iowa travels well on the road. Your thoughts on Hawks fans at road games, and were you there? I was not at the Rose Bowl. It's a very sad story. Long story short, I was flying out there. I was trying to do a 24-hour trip. I was going to fly out there for the game from Washington, D.C., go to the game, turn around, fly back. I was living in New York at the time. My flight was on the runway. We were taxiing out of the terminal to the runway, and there was a problem with the plane. We went back to the gate, never left. I had like a 2-hour window to leave, never left. I watched the Rose Bowl from Washington, D.C. at my brother's house. Some people say you were lucky after the first play of the game. I say the Rose Bowl, it's like, yeah, you want to win, but it's all about those mountains. It's all about being out there. It's all about Pasadena. It was very sad. But Iowa does travel well. I will say that. I've been to every game this season, actually, which is weird. All the road games, too. First time I've been to Iowa State. Iowa traveled pretty well, I thought, for an Iowa State game. I know it's tough to get tickets there for Iowa fans. We were doing the IWA chant loud enough throughout the second half, so it was a pretty strong contingent, I thought. The Maryland game, I've never seen anything like it for a road game, quite frankly. I can't estimate how many people were there because it was thousands. I mean, it was, and once Iowa took control of that game and Maryland fans left, it was Kinnick East. The Capital Area Iowa Club prides itself on calling themselves Kinnick East. I think that's what they called the bar they watch at or something like that. And it really was. I mean, it was incredible. It was like an Iowa home game. Everywhere I looked after Iowa was scoring touchdowns, I'm giving high fives to people. It was like the whole row. I mean, it was all Iowa fans. Iowa fans travel really well. Back in the day when they would do bowl games a different way, I know it's kind of changed up a bit. Fan travel used to hold heavy weight, and Iowa would get better bowl games based on the fan travel. Couple of Outback Bowls, I believe, over teams like Michigan. I remember one year they were chosen over Michigan. I think it was 2005. I think that must have been an Outback Bowl of sorts, something like that. But no, they travel well. They're wonderful. And I will actually be in Wisconsin at that game in a couple weeks. And especially if Iowa's still undefeated, one game away from that, it should be a lot of Iowa fans, and it should be a lot of fun. But yeah, not sure if you covered this or not, but I'm finding all the noise claiming it was 17-3 when Clifford was pulled out. Didn't realize he played defense, and the 7 Iowa got right after didn't count. I did, yeah, early on. The insanity that is, when did we stop, counting wins when players got hurt? I mean, it's a great point, David. But again, they made a play. They knocked Clifford out of the game. I mean, and yeah, I covered it early on. It was just that it was ridiculous, and Penn State fans have to stop whining. And look, if Penn State wins out and wins the Big Ten, they go to the playoff. That was the great thing about that game for Iowa in some respects is, okay, say the worst thing happens and they lose, the season's not over. They should still win the West. They should still be 11-1 and still have a shot at the Big Ten. This is just now you're number 2, and you might have the get out of jail free card for a loss in Indianapolis to get into the playoff. But why not just go there and win, go 13-0? Maybe you'll be the number 1 team in the nation and roll to a national championship. It's too easy like that. It could never be like that. I just wanted to move over to Purdue now. Because again, we touch on it a bit, but big game. Purdue, like we said, always gives them trouble. No Riley Moss, which is weird because I remember Riley Moss made his debut at Purdue in 2018, I think, and it was like, oh my gosh, he's starting. They're going to eat him alive, and they kind of ate him alive. And ever since, it's sort of like, oh my gosh, Riley Moss and Purdue, like Purdue's going to destroy him, and they will. And now Riley Moss is the best player on Iowa's defense, arguably, or Jack Campbell probably is, but he's the best player in the defensive backfield, arguably. And now it's like, we really need Riley Moss against Purdue and David Bell. It's just funny how that flips. But Iowa's a double-digit favorite. You're at home. It's homecoming. The one thing that really the thing that concerns me more than Purdue, I got to say, is there a letdown? And it's understandable that there would be. I mean, it really, and I hate to say that. Now, the good thing is Purdue's had their number. So this isn't, they're not, like, it would almost be more worrying about that if it was like Minnesota, who Iowa's just dominated, but is still kind of capable enough to give them maybe beat them. So they're not going to be overlooking this team. This team also has been very on to the next one, like, we're not going to dwell on this. It's just on to the next one. And defense always, that's the good thing about having that dominant defense. Defense always not only travels, but it rarely does it not show up. I mean, it's always there. You can always lean on it. And that's where teams that don't have a defense, the Oklahoma States of the world, but of the past, some of those Oklahoma teams of the past, a lot of SEC teams too, they Ole Miss. I mean, watch them. They score 60 and they allow 59. And anytime that their quarterback's off, they're done. They're going to allow 59 still. So the defense will always sort of be there. I think we can rely on that. Really, though, it's just the letdown. I mean, Kinnick will not be as electric because it can't get any more electric than that. I'm convinced of that. It was one of the most amazing atmospheres ever. But, what's the come down? There's not going to be a rushing of the field after the Purdue game, no matter what happens. And although if Georgia lost and Iowa won to become number one, I'd probably rush the field myself just for that. But I don't know if Georgia plays earlier or later, though. But that's my biggest concern because personnel-wise, David Bell is, of course, scary. But what's it, Jack Plummer? I mean, he's okay. He's a Purdue quarterback. He's going to throw touchdowns. He'll put up yards. Interestingly enough, Spencer Petras has thrown for about 300 more yards than him this season. And so Iowa should take care of business. And it might be ugly. It probably will be ugly. I'm thinking like a 23-10, 23-13 type of deal. But the thing that scares me is Iowa beating themselves in this situation because I think the Maryland and Penn State games showed that this defense is not only nasty, but this isn't some fluke. There was some rumblings that I don't know, maybe Iowa State's not that good, and I think Indiana, Indiana, it's clear they're not as good as we thought, and Iowa dropped a bomb on them, and they should have. There was rumblings that, I don't know, maybe Brock Purdy's not great. Maybe Breece Hall hasn't done much. I mean, Iowa shut that down. And that was coming off of an emotional win against Indiana. And I get they're never going to look past Iowa State, but it's tough to get up for, 2 straight of those. And they just cruised. And every time you think, I don't know, maybe they're going to, Maryland could put up some yards. Maybe the Iowa defense just shuts them down. And they did the same to Penn State. They couldn't really stop Penn State, so they knocked out their quarterback, and that stopped them. So I expect nothing less against Purdue and really any other teams in the West. I worry about the letdown. That is my biggest worry right now. DW Shearer, yeah, we touched on this earlier. Moss is out at least 2 weeks. It's at least 2 weeks. They said maybe Wisconsin. That's the goal. Again, the way it looked, I thought he was done. So very good news on that front, that he's going to have a shot to come back, or it sounds like he'll be back. And Terry Roberts is next man up. David Delsbury, Georgia starts at the same time, 2:30 Central. Okay, so maybe at halftime, I'll if I was leading, I'll throw on my phone. It's tough to get reception at Kinnick. I can't make a text or a phone call unless I go in the concourse, but yeah, maybe at halftime if I see the score flashing and Georgia's down like 40, then I'll have to organize us tearing down the goalposts if they become number one after this week. I wouldn't hold my breath. Georgia looks like they got it on cruise control really up until Atlanta. You never know though. Andrew Moorfield, they cannot be a letdown against their most hated rival. Purdue, yeah. Our what is it? OMHR, our most hated rival. An old bit. That's an oldie but a goodie. Yeah, you want to think that, look, you're number 2 now. There shouldn't be a letdown because you have everything in front of you. Maybe there won't be because this team has so much to play for. I mean, that is something that is undeniable. And that's the hope. I understand that everyone, including me, will be sitting there on Saturday in section 129, holding my breath the first 10 minutes of the game to see the ebbs and flows. And if Iowa can get rolling on offense, force a turnover or two, get ahead, then you can kind of exhale. It's this Purdue thing we got to get over. It took Iowa a while to get through this Iowa State thing where they're losing to bad Iowa State teams. And not that Purdue is really bad, but they're not really good at all. I mean, it's average at best, and they should be beating this team probably every year if we're honest with it, with ourselves. And so it'll be interesting though, because it's right after that Penn State. I wish they had a bye this week. That's the one thing. I just wish they had a bye, or this was like Northwestern, that doesn't have really anything that can beat Iowa right now. But it's Purdue, and you got to win the game. You're an 11-point favorite. Yeah, I mean, I touched on it earlier. No excuses. Just win. Moss is back. Man, it's always a tricky game though. Purdue, Jeff Brom, he hasn't done much in West Lafayette except beat Ohio State one time. Pretty much waste Rondell Moore's career. I know he got hurt a little bit there too. Didn't do much with him though, and he's beaten Iowa. He's found a way to beat him. I remember a couple years ago at Kinnick, the last time they were in Kinnick, that game was an adventure, and that wasn't a good Purdue team at all. It was without Rondell Moore, and David Bell was still going off. This Iowa defense is better than they were then, and so I just expect them to find a way. Andrew Moorfield, am I the only one who hopes we get first possession and go 3 and out to let Taylor deep? Let me get to Tory Taylor. So I don't know what the Player of the Year award at Iowa is. It must be the Niall Kinnick Award or something. I mean, he's the Ray Guy winner. First of all, he's not the Big Ten Player of the Week on special teams. Complete joke. The kicker from Michigan, I don't know. They were playing Nebraska. I guess he made some field goals. Unless he made about 11. Unless he went 11 for 11, what Tory Taylor was doing was just magic on special teams. I thought that was a complete joke. The Michigan kicker was Player of the Week in the Big Ten, but Tory Taylor, he's the Player of the Year for the University of Iowa, and that's saying something with all the playmakers they have on defense. I think there's just no doubt about it. I would attribute the Penn State and Iowa State wins, a heavy amount of it just strictly on Tory Taylor. I mean, Saturday, Kirk Ferentz was taking knees with Penn State getting the ball back with a shot. I mean, they had a chance, I guess. And we all just knew. And this is something that I think we're going to have to, it's going to be tough to get past unless Iowa just starts to become the punting factory USA, but just keep going to Australia for these guys. But I think it's going to hit us the first year Tory Taylor's not there. Sort of like Nate Stanley in a way where it's like, wow, Petrus can't make the throws that Nate Stanley was making and maybe we were taking for granted. Tory Taylor's doing things with punting that it's not real. I mean, we're taking knees and because we know he's going to pin them inside the 10. It's lockdown. It's guaranteed. I look over, I've been following Iowa State a little bit too. They've had so many issues on special teams, so many issues with punting. I mean, we saw it against Iowa and Tory Taylor just pinned them. And then that allowed the fumble, the scoop and score by Campbell and Ames that really ended that game. And then against Penn State, I mean, the backup quarterback, Roberson, had no chance. I mean, he's starting every possession inside his own 10. I mean, they had no chance in the last 5 minutes of that game. That's why it just felt like if Iowa can just get ahead, they'll find a way. And so that's not a bad strategy. I mean, personally, I would like to not see Tory Taylor on Saturday and maybe just Iowa score every possession. Because I don't think Purdue is going to score more than 20 on this defense, if that. But he's been amazing. He has been an unbelievable. He was great. He's been great for a couple years now, but this is just another level. I think he actually had kind of it wasn't a bad punt. It was kind of an punt for his standards against Penn State. It was a line drive that Iowa special teams covered beautifully. But other than that, he has been just unbelievable. And Penn State had a really good punter too. I will add that. But that's so invaluable. And it's funny. I live in central Iowa. So many Iowa State fans. I'm hearing Iowa State beat writers on the radio today going, if Iowa State has Tory Taylor, they're probably 5-0 and number 2 in the country. And it's like now if you had our punter, if we didn't knock out your quarterback, if like our defense, I've never seen such a great defense that's just like overlooked. So Tory Taylor's been great, but that defense it takes that defense to hold those teams down too. So I don't want to get too carried away with the punting because without the defense, I mean, the punting is unbelievable, but it really takes 2 to tango there. And the defense has just been suffocating opponents. Settle this debate between me and my wife. If you watch Roseanne from '93, Tom Arnold's section in the Ashton Kutcher. I saw Tom Arnold on the sideline when I was, 40 rows up. He's walking around the sideline right in front of us. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he's been. He was the big celebrity. He was hanging with, I think I saw him with Kirk on Twitter or something. He was all over the place. And I just wish I ran to the bar. I've heard he's a really good time to party with. But I would have to go with, I guess Tom Arnold. I think Tom Arnold. Let's see. The real Hayden. I'll join you, Tom, if Georgia loses. Yeah, we're gonna tear on the goalpost if Iowa's gonna become number one. David Marks, do punters ever go to the NFL early? I don't have my Elias stats out. I don't know if I've ever heard of that. Honestly, I can't remember one instance that's happened. I hope not. And if they do, I hope Torrey doesn't know about it. I do know that Torrey didn't know what football was until recently. And now that he's at Iowa and really like a complete celebrity. I mean, I went to Raygun the other day and he has shirts. I don't know if he needs to go to the NFL just yet. He'll never have to buy another drink in Iowa City in his life. If he's even legal to drink right now. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. That's something good to look up. Oh, he is. Okay, he's a 24-year-old sophomore. Okay. So maybe that's that. I guess those Australian punters do come over. Quick, we need an NIL deal for Taylor. He has something. I've seen shirts at Raygun. I think he must have something going on there. Thank you, Andrew, for that comment. Yeah, I don't know. If he doesn't, lock him up. Car dealership, whatever. Hell, can individuals just sponsor? I'll just start giving him money legally, just to have him stay. Why not? Hawkeye Howard, I've heard so many Iowa haters come from where on YouTube, come from everywhere on YouTube and ESPN, ABC. So many Iowa haters. Yeah. I don't get it. I touched on it earlier. I just, there's something about, because for years it was the Kirk Ferentz contract. Maybe they're upset because the contract talking point can't be used anymore. I know Dan Wolken of USA Today has dusted off about 80 of those columns, how it's the worst contract in sports. And then, there's only about 50 worst contracts ahead of him. Scott Frost, hi. Jim Harbaugh, hi. But Jimbo Fisher, hi. Well, he just beat Alabama, but still a little underwhelming. Yeah, I just don't get it. I'll never understand it. I don't know what Iowa did to people. I don't know what, there's these other programs, they cheat. Ohio State's had scandal upon scandal. They've had shady people coaching the program. Urban Meyer was a complete embarrassment at the end. And he's still an embarrassment now in Jacksonville. And for some reason, Iowa, as the more they win, the more they just go on blast because hashtag SEC, hashtag recruiting, I guess. I don't know. I think the best thing is if one of these years Iowa, I just fantasize that one of these years Iowa just wins every game and beats Georgia, because that'll just, there's no more of the chatter, but it's obviously easier said than done. I don't know if anyone's beating them. Okay, there it is. David Delsberger, proceeds from the Raygun shirts go to the charity. That makes sense. Okay. So I will start paying Torrey Taylor on my own. If it's legal and under the NIL rules, I'll just start sending him money. And I'll buy his shirts because that's a good charity to go to give to. Melissa Smith, what player on this team do you think is going to be the next star? The next star. God, I love those receivers. I think it's Arlen Bruce. And then Keegan Johnson makes a play like he did against Penn State down the stretch, and it's Keegan Johnson. And then Arlen Bruce scores a touchdown. And I think it's Arlen Bruce. I love those receivers that they have sitting there. I love that they're involved. I love that they're involved in big situations. Keegan Johnson had a huge catch and run down the sideline against Penn State. I mean, he looked like a junior out there. Arlen Bruce has looked well beyond his age out there. I think those two, they're prototypical Iowa receivers too, just from a size standpoint, it looks like. But those two are so electric, and they're already, I mean, if they're not their best, most dynamic wide receivers right now, they're right there. I mean, Tyrone Tracy, I love his stuff. It's been a struggle this year for him. Laporte is probably still their best receiver. Let's be honest, as the tight end. It's been tough for Tracy to get going. But Charlie Jones made a big touchdown catch, and then Reganey had the big play. I think it was the first touchdown in 2 years. So everyone's just contributing. But I love how those two can, you can run an end around to Keegan Johnson or Arlen Burr. You can do so much with those guys. And I still think Tyler Goodson, though, does not get, when you talk about star, I mean, he probably is the star from a talent standpoint, but I just don't think he gets the shine that he deserves. And maybe it'll take one more year to do that. And maybe it'll take a couple really, really big games. But man, is he talented. If there's one thing this offense can do better outside of scoring and a lot of things. Now, one thing that I really think I've been calling for weeks, and they did it a little bit against Maryland, and it led to, he scored on I think it was like a 70-yard touchdown. If the running game's not there, use the short passing game as a running game with Tyler Goodson. Get him into space. Just get him out there because he can make people miss. He has those moves. And yeah, he's great, going through a hole, running, moving the chains and all that. But that feels like a Gavin Williams spot or IKM. I know he has the fumble issues, but more than, between the tackles, more than Goodson in a traditional sense. And Goodson, if you just get him out there with screens, swing passes, that those short little outs he's running that he can take, the sort of Akram Wadley type of dump it off and watch him make three guys miss. He can do that. It's a game-changing talent there. He's not really Breece Hall, who's going to just run up the middle and run people over. That's just not his game. That being said, he's been great. I think he's been very, very good. It's great that he's been a constant out there. He's an invaluable weapon for them to always be able to just dump it off to if they need to. I don't put much of the running. I think he's hitting the holes really well. I think the running struggles just come down to the offensive line. And at times it's been a work in progress. They're very young. We touched on this last week on Adam's show. They're very young. That's something you got to remember. I think they have one or two seniors only. I think one. They're very young. And so it's just going to take time there. But while they're working themselves into this running game, use the short passing game as the running game. Get him into space, especially now that you're playing teams that don't have the athletes that Penn State does back there, or even the defensive chops that Iowa State has. I think it would really help them. Jacobs will be a star. He's a monster for RD. Yeah, Justin Jacobs. He's another one. There's countless on the defense. He's what a get when they got him from it was down to Iowa and Ohio State. And you can see it. There's him. When you look at a guy like Goodson and you go, I say it every game, how did they get Tyler Goodson out of Georgia? It's the same with Justin Jacobs. I don't know how they pulled this off. They got him, and he's a star. And he will, on the defensive side, he's the guy that's really popping right now. That's a great point by DW Sure by that. And Hawkeye Howard, 3 tough games against Purdue, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. Yeah, they're all, look, Iowa's never going to go out there and just overwhelm from a talent portion. It's always going to be schematic. It's always going to be execution, not making mistakes. Yes, always tough. But I think there's, and I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but I think sometimes, I don't want to let this team off the hook in that respect, that these are man, it's going to be tough to go into Madison and win. No, it's going to be tough to go into Madison and win, because it should be tough to go into Madison and win, but you should go into Madison and win. This isn't like you're going into Wisconsin and they're 9-0 as well, or whatever. It'd be 6-7-0. And it's going to be tough to win that. Or you're going into Happy Valley and they're 7. No, you should expect to win. You're going to go in favored. You're a better team. You've been playing better all year. I keep hearing all of a sudden Wisconsin now they've played, Murderers Row. Well, one of the teams that went in and beat them, Iowa just beat. They lost. They got blown out by, an okay Notre Dame team, and not a great Notre Dame team, pretty good Notre Dame team. Their offense is absolutely putrid. And really, there's just no excuse to go in there and lose. And on top of that, Nebraska, we touched on Purdue. Nebraska, again, yes, tough, especially if you go in there 11-0. It's going to be the weight of the world's on their shoulders. I understand that completely, but I don't want to confuse it with, I don't know if they're going to, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe Nebraska, should be able to win this game. No, Iowa should win that game. I mean, we're past when you're going on the road and you're whacking Maryland, and you're going to Iowa State and shutting them down. And I do think that Iowa State team is really good. I know they lost to Baylor, but that's a lot of talent there. I mean, it was no fluke. There was no fluke. Maybe they were a little overrated, but there was no fluke that they were talked about a lot. I mean, that's a talented team. And I think you'll see that going forward. I think they'll win this week and kind of get rolling a little bit. But yeah, it's tough because it should be tough. But just win. You should win now. That's any of that going to Wisconsin, and they've won there once since 09. I think they won in 15. Yeah, that was the only time. You gotta no excuses now. Now you're number 2. Go prove it. Luke Lachey, any relation to Nick Lachey? Thank you, Craig. 98 degrees. I think so. I think they're I think Nick's his father. Hawkeye Howard, last year for Scott Frost. I don't know. I think they're gonna give him every chance. Like, I could even see them at 5-6, and then they beat Iowa, which would be oh my god, tragic. If they had somehow beat Iowa at 5-6 to get to 6-6, I could see them using that. I think they really don't. I thought they were setting themselves up to get out of it, but it feels like they don't want to fire him. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that completely wrong. Like, I really think they really want. At the beginning of the season, when the allegations came out of the whatever he was doing, the practicing during COVID, or not allegations, it happened, practicing during COVID, it felt like Nebraska was trying to get out of everything. But as the season's gone along, they've been better than we thought, but they haven't won much. So it's probably his last year. If I'm a Nebraska fan, I don't know how excited I can be if they scrape across 6 wins, go to some bad bowl game, and they bring him back. Even with like, wow, you played really well. You lost at Michigan State. You blew that game. And then you had Michigan and you gave it away. I mean, you're still losing. That's the bottom line. But it's funny. Nebraska gets all this credit now. Like, oh, they're I don't know. Like, they could be really good. And then nationally, I mean, like, all of a sudden you're starting to hear rumblings like, wow, like they've kind of turned it around. Like, who knows? Like, they're probably the second best team in the West. And Iowa goes and beats Penn State. And it's like, hey, shouldn't be around here. It's interesting how that works. I second that, Craig. Sure, he's having a bad week. He's a proven winner, and Chucky'd be amazing for the Hawk. Is that a John Gruden? Okay. I don't know what that means. DW shared, Craig. They're cousins, I think. Nick Lachey and Luke Lachey. That would be hilarious. I don't know that. The real Hayden. I've been clamoring for a pop pass by Goodson out of the Wildcat all year, saving it for the Big Ten Championship game. Yeah, the Wildcat, I don't understand it. I mean, I get it. I understand the concept. I get that it's a thing. Iowa, adopted it about, it feels like 30 years too late. Better late than never. I don't mind when they run it, but situationally, I did not understand it on Saturday. I haven't understood it at times. Tyler Goodson, they were coming out of timeouts with Tyler, I think off of a turnover. Yeah, it was off of it might have been the first pick of the game. One of those, I think it was. They come out of the timeout, the commercial break, and Tyler Goodson's running the Wildcat. Well, I know he's not going to jump pass. Like, I know where this is going. So I don't mind it because it does get him some space. Situationally, though, they have to be better. It has to be used better. Maybe have him throw to Petrus, who's lined up at wide receiver, if Goodson can do that. Something. This whole lineup in the shotgun. Look, it might work against Purdue. It might work against Minnesota. I'm not saying it won't work at times, but because Goodson's that good. But I didn't understand a lot of it on Saturday. Anytime they've run it this year, it's been, I think they may have run it for a touchdown against Indiana, but it's been confusing. I just want to see him in space, though, through the passing game. Just a little bit more of that. Give teams something to think about. They ran that great play against Maryland that popped them for a touchdown. And then, like, you didn't see. I mean, he threw to Goodson a couple times, and Penn State's a really good defense, but they just didn't get him involved enough. I didn't think. Petrus was keying in on Luke Lachey and Laporta, and which is not a bad thing, but just get Tyler Goodson the ball a little bit more out on the flat. Go through some comments here. Bethard versus defense. Good question. Versus the last top 5 Melissa Smith, this team versus the last top 5 Iowa team. Well, this team's much better. I really think that. I think the last Iowa team, offensively, as crazy as this sounds, I think Tyler Goodson alone gives Iowa more of that game-changing ability. And that Iowa team in 15 had George Kittle, and had some really good Krieger Coble, the other tight end. And they had some good players. And that defense was stout. I mean, that defense was very good too. Desmond King, Mr. All-American. But I think the defense on this team, it's really unlike. I mean, like I said, I've been to every game, and on the road, I mean, they roll out there and just. I mean, even you saw it on Saturday. It's like, okay, can this defense do it again? 4 turnovers or 4 interceptions, including the first pass of the game. I mean, it's getting insane. They have been doing this for a couple years now, so I don't think it's a fluke. But this defense is unlike anything I've ever seen at Iowa. I can firmly say that they've been that good. They've been unbelievable. It's been a complete revelation this year. And that team in 15, for all their faults, they finished 9th overall. They won. They were winners. And Bethard that year, I would say Bethard could do more than Petrus because he can run a little bit. Although after the Pittsburgh game, he was kind of done running, it felt like. That's a good game, though. I think this Iowa team is better, though. I think that's why. And it's tough with that 15 team because they did not. The best team they played was the best team they beat. Their best win was probably actually, some say the Wisconsin game was probably 44-10 at Northwestern. The Northwestern team finished 10-2. And then they won at Wisconsin 10-6. This Iowa team, had they lost to Penn State, they'd still won so much more than that 15 team ever did. And I love that team. And they got to a Rose Bowl and 27 seconds away from a college football playoff. But this team's better. Now, do they run into a better team in Indianapolis than 2015 Michigan State? I don't know. I don't know if Ohio State's there. I don't know if Penn State's there, but this team is better than that team, and that's why I really think they should be 12-0. Chuck Long versus Ditka. What is New Orleans Ditka versus Detroit Chuck Long? Detroit Chuck Long. God, that's a good question. As a Lions fan, Chuck Long was an unmitigated disaster. I mean, Ditka traded all his draft picks for Ricky Williams, but it still was Ricky Williams. He did win the Heisman, so I'll give him that. The Real Hayden, Philly Special, can you imagine? I can't imagine. I mean, I can't, which is why they probably should run it. I guess maybe I can imagine it in my dreams in Indy to put away Ohio State, just run it. Everyone will be expecting, I think, a knee, and you just run it and put it in the end zone. But I don't know, like, if that's a thing. It feels like with the Wildcat, there's no possibility outside of Tyler Goodson handing it off to, I think he's handing it off to Tyrone Tracy, or him just running with it. Which I guess that's probably the best play if he can't throw, but then it's almost like, why even run it at times? So we're coming up on an hour and wow, time flies, an hour 20. I just want to touch on a couple more things. Just a reminder, this is the Iowa Sports Review. My name's Tom Clos. Probably should have reset this earlier. And I'll be with you every Tuesday at 8 Central, 9 Eastern. I write for Go Iowa Awesome under the tag of Classy Hawkeye. And you can usually see my work on Fridays before games. And then during basketball season, it's interspersed throughout when the schedules are less regimented. And just want a reminder that tomorrow, Adam Jacobi, my cohort at Go Iowa Awesome, and who really gave me my first shot on a platform like this, having me on his show on the Iowa Sports Review, will be on tomorrow to talk further about Iowa Penn State coming up against the Purdue game, And 2 weeks from tomorrow, he's having Chuck Long, Iowa legend quarterback, on. And I guess I have to step up my guest game. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe I can get like Niall Kinnick's great grandson or something. I think that would top Chuck Long, maybe. If I could get Niall Kinnick, I guess that would probably top Chuck Long, but that might be a tough get. Maybe I'll have to settle for Brad Banks. I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on one other thing with the program going forward is it can't be overstated that, and I'd love anyone's thoughts on this, but they go into the Penn State game and it's going to be a nightmare. Like, you just know it. Like, they're never going to win that game by 30. It was never going to be a blowout. It was never going to be anything, where they're going to Maryland and winning. Penn State's too good like that. But the fact that they were able, and throughout today, I've been talking about how I expect this team to go 12-0 and be in Indianapolis undefeated. But I think it's because it just feels different when at the bottom line. And I'll come on next week after they lose to Purdue and David Bell has 300 yards, and I think I'll tear the house down. But it really feels different, and not different in the respect that they're going to go to Indy and just smack around Ohio State, and then they're going to go to Miami and whip Alabama and roll into the Georgia game and, hashtag national champions. Not like that. But it feels like, even in 2015, it felt like this team, or the program, or this team was so out of nowhere. It was like a meteor, that 2015 season. It was so unexpected. They started the season unranked. This team started ranked, so we knew they'd be pretty good, not this good. And I think that it feels so much different too, because since 15, and I don't know if this is from 15, because 16 was a bit of a disappointment, but man, in recent years, whatever Kirk's doing as his career maybe winds down, I don't know. He's only 66, which I guess sounds old, but man, he's in great shape. So he could be around a while still. I do believe if they win a Big Ten championship and get to the playoff, he could retire after this year. We don't know, though. I'm just speculating. But it feels like this is not, because even with 15, they were returning everyone, but it was sort of like, okay, there is sort of a window here. And then it turned out there really wasn't a window. This feels like the beginning. It really does. It feels like the beginning of, if not a national, we're going to challenge for the playoff every single year. This might be the beginning of a Wisconsin-like dominance in the Big Ten West, at least. And that's just from the caliber of players they have. They're starting to get dudes. Let me rephrase that, dudes. And whenever they play against Ohio States, or when you see these teams, Alabama, all they ever dudes, I like to say. And that's not to take anything away from the players that Iowa was getting, but man, the recruiting, whatever, and maybe, and they're not getting all tons of 5 stars, but whatever they're doing in the development aspect, and they've always put people in the NFL, but these teams, Iowa's won 12 straight games now. And really not a lot of them have been close. It's remarkable. You go back to last year and they were scoring 45 a game. I'm even looking right now, Iowa's averaging 31.5 a game. And they're averaging 31.5 a game, and they're allowing 13 a game. They're dominating, absolutely dominating opponents. And so this whole we're all afraid of Purdue, and we're afraid of Nebraska, and we're afraid of Wisconsin, and who knows with Minnesota. But Iowa's dropping bombs on teams. And yeah, you're not going to drop a bomb on Penn State. I don't care where you're playing. They're too good. And that's where I think just Iowa's always going to struggle, is it's Penn State's just always going to get probably better recruits. But Iowa's, man, they're developing them well, and they're doing something changed. I don't know what it is. Maybe admittedly, I don't have they were 18th in the country this year, and then they were 23rd. I'm not counting stars, because in Iowa, it almost doesn't even matter. The whole stars thing. Desmond King was a 2-star with no offers, and he was an All-American at Iowa. and I think he had 12 interceptions or something in a season. So it doesn't matter at Iowa. Whatever they're doing on defense, Phil Parker, the development, and then on offense, they are bringing in there is some talent there now. It's been nothing short of remarkable. And so games like Saturday, I think, show that this is not 2015. And 2015 was the best season, the greatest ride ever right now for me as a fan, and probably for most people outside of 85. But that team still, like, if they beat Michigan State, if they hold on, which I wish they would have, I would have taken a 50-0 loss to Alabama in the playoff. But that team wasn't. They were limited. They were limited to, sort of a softer schedule and holding on against Michigan State. And they couldn't hold on. And then they played Stanford and got their doors blown off them. Like, this team's not, I don't expect this team ever this season. Maybe, I don't know even, and I still don't think, because you know what, Georgia's offense isn't much. I don't expect them to ever get their doors blown off of them. We said defense travels, and it travels well. Now the offense may be their undoing, just they can't score. But because it is tough when you're relying on the defense to hold teams to 13 points a game, but they've been doing it for 12 games now. So this is no fluke. And I just, it can't be stated enough that win over Penn State was so big going forward for this last sort of stanza of Kirk's career at Iowa. And, the ebbs and flows, and man, it looked bad. 2012, 13, 14, that's football. And it looked bad after that Tax Slayer Bowl. But something happened in 15, and then they got it rolling in 17. And really, that Ohio State win in 17. And then from 18, that 18 team's the best team the most talented Iowa team I've ever seen in my time as a fan. It's a shame I think they drastically underachieved, but this team it feels different. It feels completely different. They did not look too big for the moment there. They didn't look too big for the moment on the road at Maryland. They didn't look too big for the moment at all at Iowa State. And they're mentally tough, and then they're physical, and they have all the attributes of an Iowa team. But I think it's just all coming together. And what a season for them to do this. If there's ever a season where there's an opportunity, like, you got Alabama's already lost. Clemson's out of it. Ohio State has already lost. Like, who would have thought any of that? I mean, it's been too perfect for them, and it's been magic so far. And I'm looking forward to the magic continuing. And like I said, just riding this out. Just a couple more comments here. Hawkeye Howard, Penn State had help in recruiting. Absolutely. I mean, they had so many guys there. That atmosphere. It's tough to not look at that even on TV. I've watched back most of the game on TV, and it's like, wow, this really translates. Like, the crowd, I mean, that's all you heard about was the crowd. And what a scene. And it has to help. I mean, and for a big-time recruit, when you look at Iowa, it's not Alabama. It's not Oklahoma. And so you can come here and be a superstar. Justin Jacobs steps right in. 5-star recruit. They beat Ohio State out from him. If he's at Ohio State, who knows if he's even playing? He may have transferred by now, or maybe he'd be playing. But at Iowa, he's a budding star, and by the end of this year, he'll probably be a superstar. Hawk Slayer Bowl triggers intensify. I know I shouldn't have brought that up. I feel it too. 12-0. I said at the start of the season by Hawkeye Howard. It just feels great. Yeah. DW Shearer, great team chemistry. All the players celebrating each other's success. Definitely. You saw there was a great locker room clip I saw it on SportsCenter. It's all over Twitter, Hawkeye football. Everyone's probably seen it with Kirk, where he's trying to get through a post-game speech and the players just cut him off and mob him. That's what it's all about, really. And those are the things that you see. And it's just, one, that's why college football is great. But two, I mean, man, this team is so together. They're so together. And if it were another Iowa team, the Riley Moss injury would really scare me, but it's those reasons why, man, next man up, and everyone's making a play. If it's not Moss, it's Hankins. If it's not Hankins, it's Campbell. If it's not Campbell, it's Jacobs. And it's just one after the other. Everyone's making a play. Side note too, I've never seen a defensive backfield catch like this. I just never, I think they catch the ball better than Iowa's receivers. I'm convinced of that. I don't know what, usually people are defensive backs because they can't catch the ball, because they can't play receiver. Iowa, I don't know if they've here it comes the jinx, but I don't know if they've dropped an interception this year. Like I mean, Matt Hankins is catching the ball, diving to the ground. He's picking it up off the turf. It's been incredible. I've never seen a defensive backfield catch the ball like this team is doing. It's great to see, and I love defensive. Maybe this is the Iowa fan, and this is just what I'm used to, but I will take and even if it's not Iowa, I love, those types of Big Ten defensive play after defensive play, great tackle, great stop on fourth down over that Ole Miss, Arkansas, 55-54. Those are fun, but they drive me crazy because there's just no defense. And so I can always appreciate a great defense. And I've never seen a defense catch like this one in my life. It's really something. And yeah, the real hate and emotional Kirk it's the greatest. When he's speaking, you could even see it when they had to do the post-game interview in the tunnel, which is awesome because the fans were on the field. Kirk was breaking up. I mean, he was breaking down a little bit and caught himself. And those are the things to see. I've been over the years up until recently one of the biggest. I've always loved Kirk. I think he was the right choice at the time. It's clear of that now. There were a couple years there where I just, and it's little things like he blows a game by a decision, maybe this and that, where I've nitpicked. But I will say recently, and especially you go through they had the off the field issues last off season. And man, they had a disappointing year in 2018. That team, like I said earlier, so much talent, Hawkinson, Fant, Stanley, good defense, and they cratered at the end of the year. And but coming off of that though, they come back 10-2, and then last year they go 6 and they win the last 6 leading into this year. And he's the best thing really that could have happened to this program. I mean, it's because he never left and they've just been consistent, and it's not easy to win at Iowa. It is not. And I think that's what gets lost. I think people appreciate that when like Iowa's 5-2 and upsets Penn State, but when they're 7-0 and they've upset Penn State, all of a sudden now it's not impressive. Like people don't understand this. It is not an easy job. And he has done, I don't think when Hayden Fry retired, I wasn't in Iowa yet. I was 10 years old, or 9 years old. But when Hayden Fry retired, I don't think you could have scripted a better replacement for him. I honestly, and I know most people wanted Bob Stoops, who eventually won a national championship, and maybe he would have been as good. I know he loves Iowa probably as much as Kirk does, maybe even a little bit more. But it's really he's been the right choice. The statue should go up the second he retires. I think they handled the off the field stuff really well, beautifully. That locker room couldn't be more together, and I thought that was going to be such an issue. And maybe his down, they started 0-2 last year, and it looked bleak. I remember writing the recap on Go Iowa Awesome of that Northwestern game when they blew the 3-touchdown lead, and hinting like, Michigan State's coming to town. They lose next week. This could be it. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And I'm happy I was so wrong. They haven't lost since. And he's done such a good job keeping this program together and keeping it humming, and now really getting to another level. And I didn't think they could really get much better than they reached in like 2009, but I do think this team is as good at least, and really has a shot to do special things. And it's been amazing. I mean, it's been an amazing thing to see how cohesive this unit is. And I don't think that the Moss injury it'll hurt, because Riley's a really good player, but that next man up mentality, I know they pride themselves on it, especially the defensive backfield. And so I expect this defense to keep performing, and this team to just keep humming along. And, usually by this point in the season, you're mentally exhausted, but I feel rejuvenated. I feel like it's, the second half of the season's about to start. You get to a bye week with another win this week, and let's go. I know that this team, they're getting better each week, I think, too. I think that's another thing. This team is not regressed. I think you can look at the Iowa State game and then you look at the Penn State game. They are improving. And so I'm excited. I can't wait. I can't wait for Saturday. And then I can't wait for a week off because we need to recalibrate everything. Maybe the players need it too. It's been an emotional 6 weeks and really not shocking, but pretty shocking, I guess. Yeah, I guess shocking is the word. They're number 2 in the country. I never thought I'd see the day where they're even just number 2. So it's been amazing. Just a couple last things here. I bring it every week. Hawkeye Howard, Iowa fans. Yeah, do you think the Chris Doyle troubles had a big influence on the team? Wounds open and cleaned out to make the team stronger. DW Shearer, that's a great point. It's better, when things fester. And that's not limited to Iowa's troubles. It could be anything. I mean, look, are we better off that the John Gruden emails came out? Yeah, the Raiders are probably better off. It's these things getting revealed is the only time you can really start a healing process. And, Chris Doyle was a big part of the Iowa program. The program prided itself on paying Doyle the money they were paying him. That was a point for the program. And when all that happened, they cleaned him out. They got rid of him. And then Urban Meyer, I guess, was living in a cave for that summer, goes and hires him immediately in Jacksonville, and then had to fire him, I think, within 6 hours or something. But yeah, I do think that was a moment. And I can't speak to, I'm not inside the program. I can't speak to the program being divided at that time, but you would have to think and just assume that stuff like that, getting out in the open, now players have more, if anything, Ferentz, one thing I've always been critical of them, and they've changed this now, is you can't be on Twitter policy. They had some archaic rules about, I think they lost Benjamin because he couldn't visit or he couldn't talk to other schools once he committed to Iowa, stuff like that. All that's kind of gone. And now with the NIL stuff, everyone's on social media, so it's not a thing. But I think it's whatever they've been doing, giving players more representation, having more minorities in higher positions of power, more diversity in the ranks there, I think is good. It's healthy. And I think a lot of that coming to light helped that. And I do believe that the players that brought that to light too were not trying to hurt the program. There's a lawsuit that I can't speak on those players. I don't know what's going on there. I don't even know what's going on with the lawsuit at this point, but I do think a lot of the players that you heard talk about the program in those instances wanted to help. I don't think it was because I think they, you play for, you wear that helmet. I think deep down you do love the program. You may not love Chris Doyle and how you were treated at times, but I do think it was said to not to help the players though, but really help the program evolve. And just like an offense or a defense, you have to evolve as people. And it made Kirk look in the mirror. And, as far as I know, I've never seen him implicated in any wrongdoing or any evidence like that. And so he's made all the right changes. And again, that locker room, it seems as stronger as ever. Somebody mentioned earlier on the chat, players that aren't playing are involved. You see a lot of that. You lose transfers and stuff, and that's just how it is in college sports. But it's been a complete revelation because 12 months ago, what are we in October? Yeah, 12 months ago, the season ain't even started yet. It didn't look good. You didn't know about, they had lawsuits coming and there was the summer of tumult. And it just, I don't know. You thought maybe Kirk's exhausted a little bit. Maybe it's, it's going to start looking like Hayden the last years there. And he looks as chipper. I was watching him on the sideline. I was watching the game earlier. He looks as chipper as ever. It looks like he can coach another 5 years if he wants. And I hope he does because he's been great for the program and he was the right choice back in 98 now, I think 98, 99 season. And 99 was his first year. Yeah. He was the right choice. And this program, Penn State, may have just pushed it up another level, and let's hope with all those recruits. And The only way to really capitalize on this opportunity though is just keep winning, and it starts this week with Purdue, and and then we get into a bye week, and everyone can exhale a little bit, but just get through this week. Just win, baby. Just win. Last one here. It's 9:40. This has been a great hour and 40 minutes. Well, a couple here, I guess. Hawkeye Howard. Bob Stutz has been waving the Hawkeye flag on Fox. Yeah, he has. He's been. Look, if Kirk ever retires, that's who I want to coach. I think it would be a great roundabout way of finally hiring Stoops. But I've never seen someone that loves Iowa. I thought I loved Iowa football more than everyone, but Bob Stoops loves it more than all of us, I think. It's amazing. I mean, he's on Fox yelling "Go Hawks." It's wonderful. Hawkeye Howard. I remember when the Hawks were number 1 in '85. I can't imagine. I just that my mind can't go there. I watch clips. That's where I lived through it, but I can't imagine. I actually have done a poor job of plugging here, so let me plug real quick. If you like my I don't want to call it rambling, but my thoughts on Iowa football, myself or Adam Jacobi, who has his show on Wednesdays. Tomorrow I'm on every Tuesday. Please subscribe. There should be a subscribe button to this stream on YouTube, and like and follow Iowa Sports Review on Twitter and on Facebook, and read my stuff, read everyone's stuff on Go Iowa Awesome. We do some great stuff on there. My work runs every Friday. I take the more historical approach, and check us out and tell your friends about this, because we just love sitting around, interacting and talking about the Hawks. What a time for Iowa football. What a time to be alive, as the saying goes. And it's getting so exciting. And thank God, thank God they won this week, because if I had to come on after the loss for my first show, I would have been the jinx, and I would completely have had to have owned it. But yeah, so why don't we close the book there? This has been great. Thank you so much for everyone who interacted. I really appreciate the chats. And this is Tom Clos, signing off. I'll see you next week. See you next Tuesday. Hopefully Iowa is 7-0 after Purdue, and we can go into a bye week and catch our breaths a little bit. But it was great. Thanks.